Recent losses to Louisville and Michigan State, especially the latter in the Champions Classic, have put the coach under scrutiny for reasons that transcend the final score. However, amidst the turmoil, the unexpected support from Rick Pitino, an iconic figure in the Kentucky universe, brought not only encouragement but also a narrative capable of redefining how we should view this start to the season. College basketball is an ecosystem where expectations often exceed reality. For Kentucky, this becomes even more evident, given the legacy of excellence built over the decades. Even so, Mark Pope has demonstrated since his arrival a rare ability to reconnect the program with its emotional and strategic roots. Last season, he achieved something that seemed almost impossible, reuniting fans who were disillusioned with the team's direction. This feat alone should be enough to deserve a vote of confidence. However, basketball doesn't live on memories, and the present demands resilience from both the players and the coach. The loss to Michigan State was significant, not only for the result, but for how it exposed some of the team's vulnerabilities. The opponent capitalized on three-point shots, something that, as Pitino pointed out, was unexpected even for the most seasoned experts. However, it's important to remember that we're talking about the early stages of the season, where tactical adjustments and team chemistry are still under construction. College basketball is, above all, a living laboratory where mistakes are inevitable and learning is constant. And in this process, Pope has shown a firm and determined stance, as evidenced by his forceful statement, "We're not going to fail." This simple phrase, but full of purpose, reveals a lot about his mentality and commitment to the Kentucky project. Rick Pitino, someone who knows well the pressure surrounding this position and understands like few others the weight of representing the Wildcats, chose to defend Pope at a delicate moment. His analysis goes beyond superficial criticisms that point to inflated numbers or alleged excessive spending in assembling the roster. He questions the narrative that attempts to reduce the value of an entire program to unverified figures. "Everything is exaggerated," said Pitino, emphasizing that speculation often obscures reality. This perspective is crucial for contextualizing the current debate. In a world where impatience reigns, it's easy to forget that the development of a college team is a gradual process, full of ups and downs. Furthermore, there's an emotional aspect that deserves highlighting. The adversity faced by the Wildcats at the start of this season may, paradoxically, strengthen the group. Identity crises are an integral part of sports, especially in a program as competitive as Kentucky. Players need to learn to cope with pressure, frustration, and the need to reinvent themselves. And this is where Pope's leadership becomes relevant. He not only manages the technical side of the game, but also seems attentive to the internal dynamics and the emotional impact that moments like these have on the athletes. The season is still in its early stages, and the story that will be written will depend heavily on how this team manages to transform challenges into opportunities. Pitino, in predicting that Kentucky will be a great basketball team in March, isn't just making an optimistic forecast. He's recognizing something that's in the DNA of this program: the ability to adapt, grow, and surprise when the brightest lights are on. For this, however, patience and faith in the processes being implemented are necessary. Mark Pope has demonstrated all the characteristics of someone who understands the magnitude of the mission entrusted to him. His work goes beyond wins and losses. He's shaping a culture, rebuilding bridges, and preparing the ground for a future that is more promising than the present. And with Mark Pope at the helm, there are sufficient reasons to believe that the next chapters of this journey will be full of learning, overcoming challenges, and perhaps even glory. Share your opinion. There are times when the silence of a draft list can be interpreted as a sign of weakness, but Mark Pope doesn't let appearances faze him. In the case of Kentucky basketball, the absence of confirmed names during the early signing period for the 2026 class is no reason for panic, at least not in the eyes of the Wildcats coach. On the contrary, he sees this phase not as a defeat, but as an opportunity for strategic rebuilding and renewal. In a scenario where historic programs often feel the pressure to secure talent early in the cycle, Pope demonstrates an unusual posture: calm, confidence, and long-term vision. The initial outlook might seem worrying even to the most optimistic. Names like Baba Olatunji and Bryson Howard, two highly coveted elite targets, opted for Maryland and Duke, respectively. Arifan Diane chose Houston, while Maximo Adams decided to wear the colors of North Carolina. Darren Rippey Jr., another great prospect, didn't even include Kentucky on his final list. For a program accustomed to being among the frontrunners in the race for elite talent, the lack of signings has inevitably raised questions about Pope's ability to attract top players. However, the Wildcats coach keeps his eyes fixed on the horizon. He knows that college recruiting is a long game, full of twists and turns and surprises. The fact that Kentucky is still firmly in contention for Tyron Stokes, Christian Collins, and Caleb Holt, three of the most promising names in the class of 2026, is a clear indication that the program remains a force to be reckoned with. Stokes, in particular, is seen as the holy grail of this crop, topping the overall rankings and being a player capable of transforming any team into a national title contender. And while other programs celebrate their early achievements, Pope works behind the scenes, building relationships and paving the way to ensure Kentucky's next steps are solid. Furthermore, there is another crucial weapon in Pope's arsenal: the transfer portal. In recent years, the transfer market has become an indispensable tool for teams looking to assemble competitive rosters quickly. With the right combination of experienced veterans and young talent, Pope has the opportunity to create a balanced and versatile roster capable of immediately competing in the ever-challenging college basketball scene. His mention of player retention also deserves highlighting, as it indicates that he is investing significant effort in keeping key players from the current roster, something essential to preserving the team's identity. Pope's philosophy reflects a mature understanding of modern recruitment. He knows that success is not measured solely by the number of stars who join the program, but by the quality of the connections built with the athletes and their families. His optimism is not naive. It is grounded in a carefully planned strategy. He explicitly mentioned that Kentucky is excited about the current situation, emphasizing that the roster-building work is far from over. This confidence is shared by experts who believe that Christian Collins, in particular, has a great chance of committing to the Wildcats soon. Another intriguing aspect of Pope's approach is the possibility of silent announcements. Those players who have already signed their national letter of intent but have not yet publicly revealed their decision. This move, while rare, is not without precedent, as was the case with Billy Richmond in 2023. The idea that Kentucky may be holding some cards up its sleeve adds an element of mystery and anticipation to the draft narrative. It's impossible to ignore the pressure weighing on Pope's shoulders. As the leader of one of the nation's most prestigious programs, he is constantly in the spotlight. But instead of succumbing to the tension, he uses it as fuel to move forward. His speech reflects clarity and purpose. Kentucky is not out of the race. It's just starting to gain momentum. The combination of spring prospects, strategic transfers, and the potential arrival of high school talent puts the Wildcats in a strong position to shape a competitive roster. The 2026 draft may very well be remembered as an emblematic chapter of the Mark Pope era. Not because he secured all his goals from the start, but because he faced a moment of uncertainty with resilience and vision. For Pope, The real test is not just bringing talent to Kentucky, but building a cohesive team capable of honoring the program's rich tradition while writing new chapters to write. In today's scenario, the analysis of Jack "Goose" Givens, a beloved figure in Wildcats history, offers a valuable perspective anchored in both experience and unwavering love for the program. Givens, like few others, understands the weight of wearing the blue and white uniform and the impact each performance has on the BBN. His observation on the defense, or rather, the lack thereof in crucial moments, is particularly revealing. Modern college basketball demands intensity from the first whistle, especially for teams with aspirations as high as the Wildcats. When that intensity only appears midway through the second half, as Givens pointed out, the damage has already been done. The opponent's confidence grows, the pace of the game spirals out of control, and inevitably, the score reflects this disconnect. The central issue here is not only technical, but also psychological. A team carrying the weight of expectations can easily succumb to the pressure of being perfect from the start. This might explain why the defense, which should be a natural extension of Kentucky's DNA, seems hesitant and uncoordinated in the early stages. It's as if the players are overthinking, trying to avoid mistakes instead of playing with the instinctive fluidity that defines great teams. And this brings us to the case of Otega Owa, a player who embodies both the potential and the challenges of this roster. The veteran forward, named SEC Player of the Year in the preseason, has been a central figure in analyses of the Wildcats' current form. Givens, when discussing Owa, touches on a crucial point: the difference between reacting and pondering. Last year, Owa was a player who acted instinctively, without hesitation. Now, as Givens pointed out, there's a perceptible pause in his decision-making. He gets the ball and asks himself, "Am I open?" That millisecond of doubt may seem insignificant, but in high-level basketball, that gap is enough to change the course of a possession. Givens' observation is a powerful reminder that, for a player with Owa's talent, trusting his instincts is just as important as any technical adjustment. But where does this leave Mark Pope and his group? At a time like this, the narrative can easily slip into pessimism. However, Pope remains a resilient figure, repeating with conviction, "We will not fail." This statement, though simple, carries profound meaning. It suggests that the coach is aware of the difficulties, but also determined to transform them into opportunities for growth. The difficult start to the season should not be ignored, but neither should it define the fate of this team. There is still much basketball ahead, and the ability to learn from mistakes will be essential for future success. Jack Givens, with his clear and sincere vision, offers a path to understanding what needs to be done. Defense must once again become a lethal weapon, applied from the first minute. The players need to regain confidence in their instincts, letting go of the paralysis caused by pressure. And above all, the team needs to embrace adversity as part of the process, instead of seeing it as an insurmountable obstacle. Kentucky basketball is no stranger to moments like this. Throughout its glorious history, the program has faced crises, doubts, and criticism, and has always found ways to overcome them. With Mark Pope at the helm, there's reason to believe this team will also find its way. Perhaps the true value of this early season lies not in wins or losses, but in the journey of self-discovery the Wildcats are undertaking. But obviously everyone wants wins. What do you think? Leave your opinion.